This is the NTT IndyCar Series. With live coverage of today's practice, this is IndyCar Radio.
Welcome back to Worldwide Technology Raceway. Preparations continue for the Bommarito Automotive Group 500 tomorrow, and a large part of the preparation has been completed. Qualifying a couple of hours ago, and Davey Hamilton and Mark Jane set to take you through the next hour or so. And Davey, when the dust had settled, career pole number 71 for Will Power.
Isn't that amazing? Honestly, you think about that. Well, let's go back. 700 poles you just mentioned for Penske Racing.
Yep,
so there's
across
700
all platforms.
all platforms. Well, he's a 10th of them, and so I'd like to see that list. But what a great job Will did, and he laid it on the line. He said, I got him there, and I was threw it all out there, and it worked out for him.
Had to beat his teammate Scott McLaughlin, who will join him on the front row, and their teammate Joseph Newgarden will start on the inside of row 3. And we heard a lot of drivers as we worked our way through the qualifying order. They all knew that those Penske cars were going to be strong.
Well, they've been fast here for how long? I mean, the years and years they've been the cars to beat, no question about that. And it hasn't changed this year either. They really have a good setup, and that's what all these drivers said. They go, hey, to make us good, the cars have to be really good. And so they have that. The cars are really, really good, and they're taking advantage of it and getting the most out of it. Matter of fact, when you get 1, 2, 3, how do you beat that?
And an effort to improve the overall quality of the show tomorrow night here at Worldwide Technology Raceway. This is what's known, Davey, as Highline practice.
Yeah, when, it's interesting in the Highline practice. It's a situation where sometimes the ideal groove on this, and especially this racetrack, is on the bottom. So there's a lot of rubber down there. Nobody wants to go on the outside. Well, that's where we need the passing to happen, and nobody really wants to go out there because it's slick. So they're going to, let Group A, half the cars that go out there, go on the high side. They have to stay on the high side and try to rubber in that outside line. It's not a fun thing to do, Mark. I'll be honest with you. It's not fun for the fans, for us. It's just they're trying to get rubber there. But the goal is to make the racing better for us tomorrow and try to get that second line in to where they can pass better.
And we do want to tell folks to be patient through these couple of groups of Highline practice, because we will have a 45-minute all-skate coming up in about an hour or so, and that's going to be worth the price of admission.
Yeah, no, that's where we see who has what, who's fast, and more importantly, not who's fast, just who's fast, but who looks like they could pass, who looks like they can really maneuver around the track and gain spots. And you can see some dotted white lines they put around that racetrack, around that groove, and they just need to stay above that. And it does make a big difference. I'm a short track guy, everybody knows that. And some of the tracks we used to go to, they used to put Coke syrup, a Clorox mixture, and a weed sprayer, and spraying that second groove. Put cones around and make it go up there. Well, it was actually stickier upstairs than it was on the main line. Yeah. And a lot of indoor races do that as well on that concrete surface. It really makes it sticky. So they're not putting a compound down here, but they are getting the rubber they did.
I've had the chance to work over the years a couple of indoor races, and it was always amazing to me when the race was over. You would go down there and walk across that surface, and just how hard that surface was once that stuff set up.
Yeah, once it sets up, it is grippy. And when you walk across it, sounds like shoes on a basketball court, speaking of the Pacers maybe, and you hear that squeaking and squealing, it really pulls on the shoes, and it works really well. So right now, like I say, no compound down right now. There's several different kinds of compound you could use, but they're just going to use it organically just from the tires.
I mean, what do you think, with the exception of course, trying to work in this high line? I just, from looking at a couple of camera angles that we have, I mean, this racetrack is pretty well worn, and I would think the grip level is pretty good all in all.
It is good, and I mean, I think we heard that from a lot of the drivers in qualifying, Mark, that, hey, the grip's good, the cars feel good. I didn't get the most out of it the first lap because they didn't know it was going to be there, and then the second lap they got good grip out of it. So it does have good grip. Nobody's complaining like, oh, the track's really slick, even though there's been a lot of wind. There's been, rain, no rubber on the track at all from, this morning, and they've had to rubber everything on it so far that they can get. So no complaints there at all.
Now, for those that don't know, you spent the month of May and you were doing race strategy for Jack Harvey. And so, obviously your years as a driver and working as a race strategist for other drivers, most notably Simon Pagenaud. So for the layperson that may not be aware, a period of time has passed since qualifying wrapped up. So what changes do you anticipate they've made to their race cars to get them out of that qualifying trim and get them ready for race trim tonight?
Yeah, so one thing they'll do is more like they had them trimmed out pretty good because they're by themselves for qualifying. So you trim the cars out, you try to get them slicked as you can through the air. You may change some cambers, casters a little bit, some ride heights. And then, but for the race, you want some downforce. You want to be able to draft up on people. So I don't think it's a major big changes, but there's definitely some changes.
So speaking of changes, things have changed plenty since we arrived here earlier today. Plenty of cloud cover and drizzle, which delayed the proceedings and caused it to kind of be a work in progress. But as the day has progressed, Mother Nature has rewarded us. And all in all, Michael Young, who checks in for the pit lane, turned out to be a nice evening here at Worldwide Technology Raceway.
Well, it certainly did. And we started the day 78. It got to 80 at one point. I think the highest it ever got was 83 today. The track temp was at one time up to 118, but we're back down to 82. The breeze is now coming from the east. It's kind of softened a little bit. It's not as harsh. It's not as heavy and as gusty as it had been a little bit earlier. But the most important thing is watching that track temperature. From 118, it was 117 for Indy Next qualifying. It's down to 100 degrees right now, so everything cooling off. The sun is starting to set up behind the grandstands in the western sky, or the eastern sky. So it's been a very, very fun afternoon, and it's going to be, I think, a great afternoon or a great evening of practice. It is the western sky, by the way. I just confused myself. So, but anyhow, going to have a great practice session, Jake Query. And to your point, it was so warm earlier today. It's great that it's finally cooled off a bit.
Yeah, and one of those things that you just touched on, Michael, and yes, you are correct, it's the western sky. But when they work their way to the north end of this track, that is something that I wanted to touch on, Michael, because of the fact that when these cars now work their way between turns 3 and 4, this is the exact time of day tomorrow that this race is going to get underway. So this is advantageous for everybody for this fact. Aside from working this high line right now, that sunset you talked about comes glaring right now with absolutely nothing blocking it right into the eye level of these drivers as they work their way into turn number 4. Now, obviously, it will not take long before that sun sets once we get racing tomorrow, but right about now is when the green flag is going to fall, and that is something that these drivers have to contend with, is in fact that glare that is coming right at their eyes as they work their way entering into turn number 4. Then, of course, once they go along the main straightaway, eventually it will fall behind the grandstands here, but it is very, very noticeable right now here on what has turned out to be a very pleasant evening just about 2 miles to the east of downtown St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah, interesting to note, Dave, you got a great point, great observation that, boy, this almost looks like two different racetracks with the angle of the sun late in the day like this. That front straightaway is all in shadows and bright sunshine down the back straight.
Bright sunshine, and then drivers do get a little glare in the eyes coming off at turn 4 right there. So, you know, with these aero screens, they got like a sun visor actually on them. It kind of helps those drivers, you know, block that sun a little bit. But I have to say, that looks like Pelot. He's up there doing the job. There's a lot of cars up that second line. By the way, Pelot just ran a 171.999. Not a bad run being in that second group, and he's up there pretty consistent right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. These speeds are well off of what we saw in qualifying, and that's simply because you just can't go flat out around that high line 2, 3, and 4.
You're using up a lot more racetrack. You're making a bigger circle out of it, and there's just not as much grip out there right now. So it's good that they're doing this, like I say, and hopefully it helps for tomorrow's race.
So just a handful of minutes left for this group, and then we'll have the second group go out, and they'll get their chance to rubber things in. And then about a 15-minute break to do a little reassessment, and then we'll have that final 45-minute all-skate.
Yeah, I think what they'll do is they'll go out and kind of evaluate what that second group feels like, how much rubber got down. They actually have machines, Firestone does it. They run on these racetracks a lot of times on the drag races. They'll run this machine. It's a traction machine, basically, that they can run across them. And they can tell you, say, it's got this much grip, and you know, compared to the inside groove, and so they'll probably use one of those machines just to kind of see where that outside line is.
Now we just got to look right over the top of the head of Colton Herta going down the straightaway, and for those that get that view from time to time, Davey, might wonder why that race car, when he's going down the straightaway, he might have to cock it to the right ever so slightly.
Yeah, and what that is, it's staggered. You know, they set these cars up to turn left, obviously, and so going down that straightaway, the cars are wanting to turn left, and you have to put a little pressure in that car and that wheel to the right just to keep it to go straight. That's one reason that you'll see in the straightaways where they'll come off the corner, they'll go down low, let that stagger kind of take them down that racetrack so it's not scuffing off speed, and then they'll make a big turn back up to entry of the corners just to make sure that they have a good lineup on the corner.
Palou doing a little side-by-side racing through 1 and 2, and they're pulling up on the car of Devlin DeFrancesco, trying to get an advanced peek at what these cars are going to do in traffic.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. DeFrancesco off the pace a little bit right there. He actually qualified pretty good, 12 quick right now. Not that this means anything, but he went ahead and let one of them go, which was Palou. Looks like he's going to let one of the Aero McLarens go right now. Looks like that's Lundgaard. And Lundgaard's in the bottom right now, going to go underneath of him, it looks like, it appears to. But right now, he was able to hold, DeFrancesco's holding him off. Because of the way these turns are configured, do you get much of a benefit of a draft in either the back straight or the front straight? Yeah, you really do. I mean, you look at practice and you see some of the times where they have a no-toe report here, actually. And they're long enough to where if you get behind a guy, you can get an advantage on that toe, but the problem is their straightaways, they say they're really long, but they're sometimes not long enough to really make that pass, and so you got to set it up just right. Connor Daly qualified on the inside of row number 8. He was a little bit frustrated at the oil dry, that the remnants of the oil dry that were through 3 and 4. However, when we asked other drivers about that had qualified, they said they didn't have a problem with it because it wasn't in their line. Yeah, it didn't really seem to affect a lot of drivers. All I have to say is that, I'm on Connor's side, I know what he's talking about. I've been out on tracks before to where, that oil dries there and you just, you lack a little confidence, but you still have to go for it regardless, and you're just prepared for it. And it looks like it's pretty much all gone now after Indy Next qualified, and now this first group of IndyCar, looks like all that oil dry is gone at this point, which is good. Now, the Silver Crown race is coming up after this race. It'll be tonight. And that one of those cars did leave some oil down, so hopefully that doesn't happen. They keep us a nice, good racetrack. Michael Young.
Just standing watching Alexander Rossi get ready to go out. His helmet just made it to pit lane, and he was holding up various visors. He's actually got 2 helmets now. He's going to choose a different helmet. He was holding up visors to the sky. That sun's still setting, and it's not gotten behind the grandstands in the west yet. But he's held up 3 or 4 visors trying to figure out the amount of, shade that he needs. It's almost like a sunglass on those visors, that they have a film around there to kind of help diffuse that sunshine. So they're now removing from his primary helmet the actual visor with the most amount of sun, glass on it, and the tint on the actual visor itself, as we got to caution on the track with some debris in turn number 4 before we go to Group B. But it's going to be interesting to see just how that changes, because it is very bright in that western sky.
So in that group, Alex Palou, Colton Herta, Felix Rosenquist, Pato O'Ward, Connor Daly, Will Power, Kyle Kirkwood, Marcus Armstrong, Nolan Siegel, Marcus Ericsson, Graham Rahal, Devlin DeFrancesco, Alexander Rossi, and Jacob Abel. So once any debris has been cleared from the racetrack and any issues have been resolved, it'll be Joseph Newgarden, Scott McLaughlin, David Malukas, Christian Lundgaard, Kiffin Simpson, Scott Dixon, Santino Ferrucci, Regis VK, Christian Rasmussen, Louis Foster, Stingray Robb, Robert Schwartzman, and Callum Eilot. Yeah, that's right. And one thing, that's a good point that Michael brought up about the shields, because, when that sun comes, we talked about that sun coming in your eyes. Tomorrow, the race is starting right now. The green flag's basically coming out as we speak at this time. So they're just it's really smart of them to kind of say, hey, this is the time it's going to be. Let's get prepared for the race tomorrow, see what shield we need, because obviously it's going to get darker, but the lights are going to come on. And so it's going to be bright here, but it's still dark. And any time that you have a dark shield under lights, it just seems different. It seems like I always wanted that medium tint. Michael Young.
Yeah, but looking at the various visors, I have a chance to grab Alexander Rossi. You've held about 3 or 4 visors up. Ultimately, you know what you want, but that sun very bright. What do you ultimately decide is the best for this condition?
Well, we tried a new one that's supposed to be auto-adjusting, and it didn't work. So just going back to a normal visor.
So, but you always experiment with things like that it's always trying to improve the glare and cutting that glare?
Not really. This is kind of new technology that seemed pretty cool, but yeah, it wasn't working.
Sometimes technology doesn't do what you want it to do.
Exactly.
Well, good luck out there in this final practice session, Alexander Rossi.
Yeah, that's how far the technology has advanced, Davey, where they can actually have differing levels of tint to those visors. But here's the problem. I mean, at this time of the night, as you suggest, it'd be tough to go with one and stick with it because that sun's eventually going to go down.
That's right. So what I used to, another thing that you do, they actually, not that we need tear-offs anymore because we got aero screens, but it could work for these guys, is I used to put a tinted tear-off on my shield, like Texas and some of the races we did at night, but starting the daylight. You put a couple tinted tear-offs on. It's good as the sun comes out, but then when the sun goes down, it's dark, you could peel those tinted tear-offs off and just have clear ones on after that. So there's always, you're always trying to get comfortable as a driver, do what's right, and make sure that you always see the way you need to all the time.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get the thoughts and impressions of some of these drivers as they start to make their way out of their race cars, the ones that have just completed the session. Colton Herta among those we saw getting out of the race car. And again, in group number 2, it'll be Joseph Newgarden, Scott McLaughlin, David Malukas, Christian Lundgaard, Kiffin Simpson, Scott Dixon, Santino Ferrucci, Ritas VK, Christian Rasmussen, Louis Foster, Stingray Robb, Robert Schwartzman, and Callum Eilert. Now, obviously, things starting late in the day tomorrow, into the evening, in fact, a night race Sunday night. How different is that for drivers in terms of having a routine when you normally get to the racetrack early in the morning?
I think it's a situation where they all actually like it because it kind of gets their normal routine up because race drivers usually get up like at the crack of noon. So when it's morning, the drivers aren't really usually used to that. It's afternoons and evenings seem to be better for most of these drivers.
Probably be good for some of these crews. I mean, let's hope in that regard that it's a clean session tonight, and boy, they could just roll those things back into the paddock and lock the doors and get here fairly early tomorrow.
Just hope it's all clean, and especially for these crews. Because you have an incident right now in the final one. That is one negative about having a final warm-up late in the evening, is that sometimes drivers have to stay up late, or the crews have to stay up late to fix it. But it's an advantage because sometimes we had final warm-ups day of the race, and you have issue then, you really got problems.
So be interesting tomorrow night, as you mentioned, Davey. I mean, we're going to take the air around 6:30 local time, and then we'll get the green flag and go racing. And boy, by the time we get about a quarter of the way through the race, maybe the halfway point, the lights will have taken over here.
Yeah, they'll take it over and be under the lights. I mean, it's definitely going to be a night race, and when it's all over, it's going to be really dark. But these drivers, they'll be prepared for it. I think it's exciting. It looks like a great day tomorrow. Matter of fact, that once the clouds rolled out of here, it's actually really nice. It's a little windy now. The wind continues to change again. Sometimes it's a tailwind going down this front straightaway. Right now is that wind going from the back straightaway to the front straightaway, kind of a crosswind, which, every way, when you're going so fast, these cars, they're so aero-dependent, that when that wind blows, it definitely makes a difference.
Well, you've got a ton of experience racing under the lights, especially in the NTT IndyCar series. And I think one of my favorite quotes of all time was a guy that I know you had a ton of respect for and loved racing against, and a driver that was so very, very good to me very early on in my career, your good friend Mark Dismore. And Mark told me, he said, the biggest adjustment for me was when I was going either in the back straight or the front straight, and all of a sudden I would see a shadow on the wall out of my right side mirror, and I knew there was nobody beside me, but it still spooked me.
Yeah, and the reason that you seen that was real wild, because as a fan, you're looking at the track, it looks so bright and so good. But with Musco, they do such a great job with the lighting, but the lighting's actually faced away from you. So when you are going down straightaway, it's not pointed at you, towards you, to keep it out of your eyes. But what happens when you go by and you look in your mirror, that's the spot. Yep. You see that light coming at you, and it leaves some dark spots in these right. It definitely messes with you in the mirrors.
So it's a bit of an adjustment for these drivers, too, but they all love racing under the lights, and we love calling it, and I know the fans love watching it. Let's go to Michael Young.
I just saw Will Power. He climbed back into his pit box, but we spoke briefly. He got out of the car. He's getting ready to get back in. I said, how's that highlight? He goes, and he raised his eyebrows. He goes, grippy. Real good. I said, really? He goes, oh, yeah, it's very grippy. So that's positive. And as we have these drivers hop out after the second group, that's so far so good from our pole sitter. And certainly if he's positive about it, I think we'll find more drivers also positive.
Yeah, it's great news, Michael. I'm glad you asked him that, because, we haven't been able to talk to anybody. But, just because there's not rubber up there and it's not dark up there, but, by the way, it doesn't mean it's not sticky.
Let's go to Jake Query.
Okay, I've got to ask you this, Colton Herta, as you went out there in group number 1, How brutal is that glare? Because I would imagine it's got to be tough coming into turn number 4 with that sun. It's not going to be there for a long time, but it's going to be there at the start spot.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a lot worse, which is a good thing. Not to say that it's nice. Like, you still, when you turn into the corner, we're looking for those dotted lines to stay up above on the ground for this highline session. I couldn't see them until I kind of got around the corner a bit. But I could see in front of me. Sometimes you get the glare so bad you can't even see the car in front of you. So it's not that bad. Like you said, it's only going to be there for a little bit before it kind of sets over and we get into the night.
How was the grip? I mean, obviously you were in group number 1 there. Were you able to tell any difference at all?
It's definitely going to be usable, I think. I'm going to be trying it this next session because you never know, like, the low line will be faster, but when you add in the slipstream and being able to get a little bit of clean air from the car in front, you know, I think it'll definitely be usable. Do I think it'll come in fully to where you're going to be passing guys in 1-on-2 on the outside? It's hard to say. That's going to be tough. I think it's going to be more for getting runs off of the corner, off of 3 and 4, and off of 1 and 2, and passing down the straights.
All right, we'll let you get back at it. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Colton Herta. Mark?
Yeah. Some more really good information. You know, Colton, he knows, and he's a guy that's not afraid to go up there by any stretch. So that's good to know there's something up there. And I think if the car's off, if you're really racing with the guy, as Colton said, you maybe just get a little bit of a run off down that back straightaway. But it'd be, I think, good for, you know, a slower car to be able to have that second groove. As you see Scott Dixon going up there, going around one car, then inside of another one. So he's definitely making it work himself.
Robert Schwartzman, Scott McLaughlin in that trio of cars that came off of turn number 4 together, and Scott Dixon decided to widen the elbows out and kind of move them to the side.
Yeah, and when he passed 2 of them down straightaway, if that's race, that's a good run right there. So he looked good up there, and I'm surprised that it's as good as it is, to be really honest with you.
Yeah, it's interesting to note too that a lot of these drivers that you know, they're give them an inch, they're going to take a mile, because not all of them are keeping all those tires to
Right.
one side of that dotted line. I mean, they're all kind of inching down there just a little bit.
Yeah, just like we see McLaughlin, he's not really below it. I mean, he's just kind of got the right sides above it only, but the intent is to get the entire car above it, because, you know, and those that don't do it, you know, it may be a disadvantage for them in the race. So everybody should want that outside groove to be sticky and good. And I always in short track racing, matter of fact, we go dirt racing, if you don't wheel pack, you don't practice. And nobody wants to wheel pack because you get your car all muddy and it's heavy and you got to scrape it off. But at the end of the day, if you don't do it, you don't get to practice, and that kills you for qualifying.
Now, for those that say, well, my car just won't handle down there, does that mean maybe you reduce the speed a little bit so you can go through there?
Yeah, they just want you to go through there. Just reduce the speed, go through there, no big deal. And if you see a car coming and gaining on you, just pull out of the way. They're not saying you can't go to the bottom, but don't do it lap after lap. I mean, just get out of the way if that's the case, or if you want to pass somebody, you go down there and let that car go up there. So this is not a race. This is just trying to get rubber in. So.
There's no points, no money on the line here. You know, no notoriety of any kind.
Right.
You just said the greater good, and you know, trying to make this a team approach at this
Your bravery doesn't do you any good here at all.
So in terms of race strategy tomorrow, kind of set the stage for us. How many stops do you think it's going to be?
You know, this is going to be an interesting race, because last year, you know, I think it was a 3-stopper that would win this race, and I think that last year it actually did. I'll do some homework tonight on it to kind of see what they did last year, find out, you know, the hybrid unit. We haven't talked much about that today, but that hybrid unit in these cars that they are able to use, but they have to kind of charge organically, because if you manually put the charger in, it takes more energy to charge them than it does to deploy it. So I expect it to be a 3-stopper, but, you know, tire deg, that's going to be another thing, how much the tire deg falls off. And as we've seen before, when the yellows come out, opportunity to come and get some fresh rubber, it could be a 4-stopper as well.
We talked to Kara Kristalik from Firestone earlier today. It actually seems like 4 days ago. We've been here so long. But we talked to Kara earlier today, and I thought she said something interesting to me, is that the way this track is designed, you would think that it would absolutely wear those tires out in terms of the deck. She said, but because these straightaways are so long, the front and the back over 1,900 feet, she said that almost gives those tires plenty of time to cool off and cut down on that deck.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens. There's just so much air on these tires, and the brakes and everything, because you're not using any brakes around here, so everything stays really cool. You know, brake temp really gets your tire temp up, so you're on street, road courses, ovals are where you have to use the brakes. That gets that tire temp up, and that's what causes tire wear as well. And here, you're just not using it, so they're always cold. So she's right. I mean, that just going that fast cools the tires off.
2.5 minutes left in the session, Michael Young.
Definitely DeFrancesco. First off, you were putting a new visor on your helmet, and obviously the sun will be going down momentarily. What happens when it gets too dark? How do you get that off, or how do you transition?
So we've got a dark tear off, a tinted tear off from Bell that will run while the sun's still on and starting to go down, and then as soon as the sun goes down, we'll pull that off and we'll just run a clear visor for the rest of the race.
A little bit about this Highline practice. We talked to a couple of drivers that thought the Highline was grippy. What say you?
I think it's definitely usable. I think it'll be good for starts and restarts. You know, overall, I think it's good that IndyCar do this. You know, I think it's going to make the racing and the show better tomorrow overall as a whole.
Sounds like a winner. Well, good luck the rest of this practice. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That's Devlin DeFrancesco.
Yeah, I saw a ton of passes last year, Davey, as a result of this very effort right here to put that Highline in.
You know, we talked about what a great race it was last year. A lot of crazy stuff. You know, Will Power had this in handle, and then I felt like, and then his teammate kind of brake checked him coming off before, which that was on his teammate, no question about it. And caught some guys up, caused a big wreck down there, including Rossi. And Will wasn't, you know, he did what he does. Tells people they're number one sometimes, and but it was exciting the whole night.
Well, there's no question, and again, the multi-screen monitor that we have a look at, Davey, that, boy, this thing really, it's probably as rubbered up right now as it's going to be.
Yeah, no, it looks really good. I mean, that, you know, I'm surprised on how quickly that outside groove got turned to color, got black. And now, got to remember nothing. I know it's a different rubber. It's on Hoosier tires instead of Firestones, but the Silver Crown cars, they're not afraid to get up there. They run that second groove quite a bit. And I think that will help them as well, to be really honest with you. Indy next, they'll be out on the track tomorrow before IndyCar, but I think that rubber, they won't lay a lot down up there, but I think enough to add some grip. Oh, and I see, looks like McLaughlin just gave somebody a number one as well.
Mutual admiration society out there amongst these drivers. Final practice coming up a little bit later on, Davey. I mean, bottom line is this final practice session is going to be what you stick around for, folks. It's going to be awfully busy.
Yeah, really busy. As a matter of fact, time's up basically right now. McLaughlin went through. That was odd. I think he went through the pits, told somebody they were number one, pulled out, and the checkered is out right now, and he's coming around and cross that start-finish line. He's coming in right now. Malukas, not that it means anything. We're in 173, top of the charge. Below second, Lundgaard, Herta, Rosequist, Dixon, Rasmussen, O'Ward, Daly, and Eilot are the top 10. Not that it matters. It's high. It's you know, high practice or high groove testing or getting grip in the track. So it means nothing right now. But it showed McLaughlin's in car. Not exactly sure what went on there. Still don't know.
Lots of track activity left, including the USAC Silver Crown Series and the NTT IndyCar Series, their final practice session. You can rejoin us for that in about 8 minutes from now. We expect that around 7:50 local time. So long for now from Worldwide Technology Raceway.
The preceding was an exclusive copyrighted presentation of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network.
certainly a passion of mine, but Formula One, NASCAR, really everything. I'm just a motorsports fan. Always wanted to be involved in it. Loved the speed, the thrill of motorsports. You know, when I was a kid, really anything that was propelled forward by an engine, I was interested. So just lucky that I got involved and was able to make a career of it.
When you first got to jump behind the wheel of a go-kart, which I'm going to assume is the first thing you got to drive, did you enjoy it right away, or did you have to learn to love it?
You know, the first time I drove a go-kart, I was actually pretty scared of it. It's funny thinking about that now, but I remember being so fearful of the speed. You know, it's one thing to drive kind of a kid kart or something that you would find, you know, in a community where it's just a rental kart track. But when you drive a proper sanctioned karting event, you know, with a real high-powered kart, it's intimidating, you know, and you're typically going up against people that are doing this every weekend, so they're pretty skilled at what they do. So my very first experience, I remember being overwhelmed on track. You know, I was getting passed by a bunch of people, you know, wondering if this was something I wanted to do. But you overcome that pretty quickly. You know, within a couple race weekends, I felt comfortable and just, you know, ready to figure out how to win.
What would you describe as your first big win, and what did that do to the confidence level?
I think what my first big win in karting was not too long into it. You know, it was in my first full season. It was probably about halfway through the year, and I think finding that success early is helpful to, you know, give you motivation to keep going. And then in racing cars, you know, winning the Formula Ford Festival was a big, you know, ticket victory for me. I went over there on a scholarship program, the Team USA scholarship, which is pretty well known in the open wheel ranks and in INDYCAR. It gives, you know, a couple of American kids every year an opportunity to go compete in Europe and, you know, sort of test yourself. And winning the Formula Ford Festival, it was a catalyst for me to, you know, stay and compete in British Formula Ford and just really set me up for, you know, great confidence for the rest of my career.
Outside of a dad, because I'm outside of your dad, because I'm sure he played a big part, have you been able to identify like a mentor or a coach that really helped develop you as a driver over the years?
You know, it's hard for me to pinpoint one person. I've had so many different mentors, if you will, within motorsports. So I don't want to name just one, but my dad was definitely number one at that. You know, he's given me the motivation and the belief to always find a way. I think that's critical. Motorsports is one of these, you know, it's one of these businesses where if you just don't have the sheer determination, it's incredibly difficult to make it. You've got to have ultimate belief that you will always find a way. You know, you're always going to have obstacles and you just got to find a way around them or a way through them. And my dad instilled that into me very early. I think that's like foundational for making it in motorsports.
Final thing, was a career in motorsports always the goal? I mean, what was young Joseph Newgarden? Were there any other avenues that you would have liked to explore? Not necessarily a plan B, but like something you could have seen yourself doing.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I was so laser focused in on racing. Once I got through a couple years of karting and we were looking at, you know, transitioning into car racing, it was really difficult to envision doing anything different. I was so focused in on the task. So I never really gave thought to that. You know, now as a 33-year-old, there's other things I know I could have gotten involved in. I probably could have been a financial advisor or, you know, some sort of financial services person. That would have been in my wheelhouse. But, you know, from a pure competition standpoint, you know, racing was what I loved. I played baseball and basketball growing up, but I didn't like anything like I liked racing. So, yeah, just very focused on that. And, you know, fortunately, I was still pretty young coming out of high school when the opportunity to maybe go pro was present. So there wasn't a lot of lag time between, you know, finishing high school and then thinking about what you're going to do. I was kind of at the cusp of, you know, making it professionally. So it's been a cool ride.
That's Indy 500 winner Joseph Newgarden, and those are his racing roots.
Over Pato Award, but Pato has ahead of steam, exiting turn number 2. He'll close in on that rear wing of Alexander Rossi.
Looks like one car heading up the backstretch now, but Pato Award started to take a peek to the inside. Alexander Rossi closed that lane. Rossi still leads him out of turn number 3.
Just about 40 laps remain here in the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500. The lead belongs to Alexander Rossi.
This is INDYCAR Radio, nationwide, on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network.
5 laps to go, and it looks like Pallot's going to nose in front of him. They'll be side by side, Nick Gilman. You can call that race off the pit lane.
Yeah, they're going to go side by side, exiting pit lane, but up front, Colton Herta's got a charge. He's going to look to the inside, wheel to wheel, with Pato Award down the backstretch.
Side by side in the setup of turn number 3, and Colton Herta's going to inch past Pato Award now in the exit to turn number 3.
Otto Award with a power move down the back straightaway as he rips across the start-finish line. He'll see 5 to go mark here at the Nashville Superspeedway.
Colton Herta, the lap winding down now, has opened it up to about a 5/10 of a second advantage. Otto Award tries to come pedaling back now as they exit turn 2.
They got bottled up behind the lap car of Stingray Robb. Otto Award in to jump out of the throttle with Colton Herta went full send into turn number 3. Here they come through 3 and 4. Colton Herta's advantage, 7 car lengths over Otto Award.
Now Kirkwood has the 3rd spot on the podium for now, but he just relinquished that to Joseph Newgarden. Newgarden is on a charge, Dick Yeoman. He's at the start-finish line, and he is hauling the mail.
He would love to get a race win here in front of the Nashville fans, but he's got to find a lot down the back straightaway. Colton Herta by about 8 car lengths over Otto Award, as we've got a couple cars moving high down the back straightaway, but it's still Colton Herta out of turn number 4.
Kyle Kirkwood threaded the needle between 2 cars at the halfway point of the backstretch. He hopes to catch Newgarden, but I don't think he can do it. And Dick Yeoman, 2 laps to go, and it's all Colton Herta into turn number 2.
He made that pass of Otto Award, and he has flat left him, the California kid in that Cambridge car, halfway down the back straightaway with the race lead.
Newgarden continues on the charge, but it's not going to be enough for him. Colton Herta with a 1.3-second advantage as he'll see the white flag this time by Colton Herta in that Cambridge machine. Powers his way into turn number 1.
Takes the nice arcing angle into turn number 1, gets to the bottom of the racetrack and hugs that apron out of turn number 2. Colton Herta looking to close the season with a race win in Nashville.
And he's going to grab the 2nd spot of the championship as well. What a day it has been for Colton Herta. Alex Palou will win the 2024 championship. The Big Machine Music City Grand Prix presented by Cambridge belongs to Colton Herta. He takes the Advanced Auto Parts checkered flag. What a charge by Joseph Newgarden. He closed right up underneath Otto Award. He can't grab the spot though, so it's Herta, Award, Newgarden the podium. Kirkwood, McLaughlin complete the top 5.
Only 5 more minutes until airtime.
That was sick. Every part of that race.
Lap number 3, another lap at 234.168.
Scott McLaughlin would love to be able to put his name as one of those that you say, that yellow submarine. I think of Scott McLaughlin in the 108 Indy 500. He roars his way up turn number 4.
The 4-lap average, 234.220. Scott McLaughlin grabs the pole for the 108th Indianapolis 500. Scott McLaughlin with a lead of about a 1/10 of a second. You can throw a blanket over him. Here comes Connor Daly into turn number 1.
Connor Daly chases down Scott McLaughlin, gets to the back bumper, and he'll jump out of the throttle. McLaughlin holds the lead by 3 car lengths.
Scott McLaughlin still has that 3 car length advantage, but this kid from Noblesville, Indiana wants to get back around and take the lead. Top 5 remain the same. The field still single file through turn 2.
So Scott McLaughlin trying to fend off Connor Daly. Daly goes to the right, goes to the left, then tucks in behind him to the north end. Santino Ferrucci gives chase along with Stingray Robb. Lundgaard, Rossi, Newgarden, Herta, Rahal below the top 10. They come off at turn number 4 now. Great move, Connor Daly, side by side in the Art of Bricks and into turn number 1.
I wondered how long he'd wait, and Connor Daly, much to the applause of the race fans here in turn 1, takes over the race lead.
Turn 2 greets him as he hits the midway point. 4 car length advantage over Scott McLaughlin. They're going crazy. Here in turn number 2, Santino Ferrucci still riding in that 3rd position. But for Connor Daly, he'll take that lead and dives into turn number 3.
This is INDYCAR Radio, nationwide, on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network.
Checker flag, baby. Well done.
Turn it around. Let's go.
Stay tuned. We're live in 3 minutes.
All the fans here in Milwaukee are on their feet cheering on McLaughlin and Dixon into turn number 1. Again, Dixon trying to search around the racetrack, find any amount of speed to run down McLaughlin down the backstretch.
It's up to 0.8 of a second now. The PNC bank machine makes a hard charge into turn number 3. Scott McLaughlin will see the white flag this time by up at turn number 4.
At Gallagher Chevrolet for Team Penske, and Scott McLaughlin roars underneath Aaron Likens. White flag into turn number 1. Good entry, absolutely stable through turns 1 and 2. McLaughlin trying to hold on to win here in Milwaukee.
Holding steady at 0.7 of a second for Scott McLaughlin. He has led 84 laps on the day. Scott Dixon with a hard charge. He's cut it down to 0.5 of a second. McLaughlin up at turn number 4 for the final time. The Advanced Auto Parts checkered flag is in the air. Pole sitter yesterday, race winner today. Scott McLaughlin goes to victory lane.
We're live in 2 minutes.
Joseph Newgarden takes him down to the white line. They battle for the lead at 3.
Which way's Pato Ward going to go as they're into turn number 3? Tucks right on the rear wing of Joseph Newgarden. Newgarden doing everything he can. Coming to the white flag, holding off Pato Ward.
That is a couple of car lengths for Joseph Newgarden. But here comes Pato Ward, about a car length behind.
And when they come off of turn number 4, the white flag will be in the hands of the starter, side by side into one.
They're side by side. Pato Ward to the outside. He'll take the race lead. Award around Newgarden into turn 1.
And Pato Ward has a 3-car length advantage over Joseph Newgarden. Newgarden trying to be the 6 back-to-back winners, but not if Pato Ward has anything to say about it. He'll go extremely low down that back straightaway.
Pato Ward snaking around, trying to irritate that air. Newgarden to the outside. Newgarden side by side has taken the lead in the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
This is the NTT IndyCar Series. We're live in 1 minute.
1 minute. Timeline?
Timeline copies 1 minute.
He's got it out of the short chute. Newgarden by 3 car lengths, leading out of turn 4, Mark James.
Joseph Newgarden with a strong run into turn number 3. Pato Ward makes a run, but he will not catch it. Joseph Newgarden goes back to back. He makes the improbable finish into turn number 3. He makes the pass, makes it stick. Joseph Newgarden goes back to back, wins the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
30 seconds until showtime.
Okay, now I'm happy. Great job, guys. Winner, winner. Nashville hot chicken dinner, buddy. Good job. Oh, yeah, boys. Good work. Good work. Let's go, boys. Woo!
Let's go!
Woo!
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. This is the NTT IndyCar Series. With live coverage of today's final practice, this is IndyCar Radio.
Willpower, I'll be honest. When I looked at some of the practice speeds, saw what your teammates did, and saw you, I didn't necessarily think of you as the guy that was going to contend for pole. That's on me. What about for you? Did it surprise you what you had in that car?
No, I knew what I had in practice. I was just got traffic and so on, but I knew that I had to be all but flat through 3-4 if I wanted to have a shot at pole. But the car was really good. Just a slight misshift on the back straight, but can't really go much faster than that for me.
That came with a slight misshift.
Well, just a bad shift we call. It's a big cut. That's probably why I was a little slower, but yeah, man, it felt good. I was G'd up to go hard. I tell you, I was just going to send it. Haven't been on pole for a long time on an oval.
That's career pole number 71 for Will Power and the 700th for his race team across all of their platforms. Mark James, Davey Hamilton, Michael Young, Jake Query set to take you through the final 45-minute warm-up session before we go racing a little bit later on today. Picture perfect conditions. Michael Young, can you reaffirm that?
Oh, 80 degrees, and the track temperature's actually dropped another 8 degrees. It's down to 92, so by race time tomorrow night, we expect these exact same conditions. Fast speeds and hopefully a lot of passing as well with that highline practice. Several of the drivers saying that it was grippy up there. We may use it for some starts and restarts. It's going to be a fun night tomorrow night. This should be a fantastic final practice session.
Penske flexing some muscle in qualifying earlier this afternoon. Davey, front row, Will Power, Scott McLaughlin, and Joseph Newgarden rolls off on the inside of row 3.
Yeah, no, very impressive with that Penske organization. You just look at all the wins they have here, how confident they are here. We knew they're going to be fast, but man, when you sweep the top 3, never easy to do in this series, no question about it right now. But how about, I think who starts 4th is Malukas, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
And he's on top of the charts right now, 173.40. Not what he qualified by any stretch, but I mean, he's been first at the top of the charts all weekend. Don't count him out of maybe a Foyt opportunity to win this race.
Meyer Shank teammates said, a word. They had a pretty good qualifying day too. Marcus Armstrong will roll off to the outside of row 3. Felix Rosenquist inside of row 4.
Yeah, really good job by Armstrong and Rosenquist. Matter of fact, I continue to say that they have their partners basically with the technology of Chip Ganassi Racing. So when it comes to setup on the cars, they all work together. And, they beat those guys. So really good job by them.
I think Mike Shank would like us to remember that they had their fair share of success when they had that alliance with Andretti, too.
Yeah, no, they've done well. Won Indy 500. I mean, so they've had good relationships with Connor. I think it's really worked for them. I really appreciate the way that Meyer Shank came into this series. He came in very humble.
Yep.
They started with a one car part-time. And then they thought, okay, we did it part-time. Maybe can we do it full-time? So they did one car full-time. And then they said, oh, hey, they won the 500. Then it's two full-time cars. So they're very humbled. They did it very methodically. They had the sponsors lined up. They did it properly. They got proper people before they just jumped into it. Really, I think, really did it just proper. I mean, when you look at how some of the IndyCar teams get started in the series, and man, hats off to them for doing it really a good way as competitive as this series is.
Alex Palou looked virtually invincible after he left the Indianapolis 500 with all of the wins that he had amassed and the comfortable advantage. And a lot of that went away when he got punted into the tire barrier late in the race in Detroit. A rare DNF for Alex Palou. What do we make of him rolling off on the inside of road number 5 here?
Well, I think it's going to be some excitement because, he has really good strategists. Barry Wanzer's, he always puts him in really good position. It's a long race. There's going to be a lot of pit stops. I think tire deg's going to be part of it. I think that, there's going to be maybe some yellows and strategy comes into part of it. And I just think that, he's always there at the end, and it's not where he wants to qualify, but we'll see. Right now is going to be tell how good his car really is. And we see Colton Herta really slicing and dicing traffic, and that's one thing that I look for during these final warm-ups is how good can people, run in these races. And man, he went by Armstrong Ericsson like you stopped.
And Jake Query, you had a really interesting conversation with our points leader earlier in the day, and he talked a little bit about the mindset. Do you continue to press, or do you maybe drive defensively?
That's the thing, Mark, is it's interesting because Alex Palou finds himself in a situation where he has a 90-point lead on Pata Award. And one would conventionally say, okay, it would seem as though at this point you keep it clean and you rack up some top 5s, top 10s, and excluding a Pata Award would go on a super hot streak, that perhaps Alex Palou in that case could just kind of hang on to that points lead. And so I did ask him that question. Which way do you take it? Do you stay aggressive? You have been so good to this point in winning every race and sparing those that Kyle Kirkwood has won in this series this season, or do you just go ahead and play it a little bit safer? And he said at this point you stay with the level of aggression. You go with what has gotten you here and the dominance that he's had with that 90-point lead, and that's a scary thought for everybody else, thinking that Alex Palou, if he is staying with that same mindset of, listen, if I'm running 9th, I'm looking to run 8th and then 7th, 6th, and work the way up. So I think that what we're going to see so far is the same level of tenacity from an Alex Palou, trying to qualify well, trying to get up front, and then as he does, once he gets that lead, run away and hide. That's what we've seen so far. That, at least for now, is still the mindset of the multi-series champion, Alex Palou.
Scott Dixon's always been known as a guy that if I had a 5th-place car, I'm going to take a 5th-place car, especially if I'm battling for a championship. And I don't know that it's never really asked Scott that, and don't know if maybe that's a fair assessment or even he would feel as though it's an accurate one. But I've also had drivers tell me over the years, look, when it comes to points and running for a championship, if you win, nobody's found a way to beat that.
Yeah, and he knows how to do it right now. And Scott's not off his game. He can win any championship at any time, but it seems like his teammates really kind of taken over where Scott has left off on all of his championships, and that is just getting the very most out of the car, having really good luck, having good strategy calls, and having really good race cars. And I think you add that together, and that puts you in the front of this championship. And not easy at all to win as much as he's won. I'm off on stats a little bit, but I think he won the first 3 races, and then right in a row, and then I think Kirkwood won one, then he won the next couple or whatever it is, and so guy just on fire.
We know there's only been 2 winners.
That's right. I do know that.
Yeah, we
it's definitely Palou and Kirkwood, the only 2 winners of the series. That's
and for the guys that are trying to chase him down, the good news is for them, I mean, Kyle Kirkwood will know early on how hard he pushes because he's starting right next to him in row number 5, and Award is starting on the inside of row 2.
That's right. So there are going to be some battles there, and I'm going to change it up a little bit as we're watching right now. Santino Ferrucci, in that 14 car, AJ Foyt, he just doesn't seem to like that setup. That's a Penske Alliance. He's got the same setup, or has the opportunity to have the same setup as David Malukas. David finds himself up front. He's P2 right now in this practice. Right now, we look at Ferrucci, P23. Just doesn't, and at Indy, if you recall, right, he didn't really like the setup, and he finally found it. He did really well in the race. I mean, he was a contender. He was up towards the front. But it seems to me like that alliance and that setup that they're bringing, that team, works for one driver, but doesn't seem to be working for the other one, which is pretty interesting. And I'd like to get more into that, and hopefully he can find some speed in that 14 car.
He qualified on the inside of row number 10, did Santino Ferrucci, while his teammate David Malukas was rolling off fourth.
That's right, and that just tells the story. And just like right now in this final warm-up, I know you can't tell everything by this because you don't know what tires they have on, you don't know what traffic they're in or what they're trying to do. But you know, you always want to be top of the charts if you can, it just seems like there's a big speed variance between those cars, and as teammates, it seems like they should be a little closer than that most times.
So in this process, as we're getting ready to, you put race trim on the car and you're seeing what it'll do in race trim. Okay, so the driver goes out. Obviously, there's tons of data. There's, all kinds of telemetry that gets fed back to the teams and in the pit boxes, and engineers make calls and whatnot. Who ultimately has the final say-so in terms of major adjustments that need to be made to the race cars? Is it the driver or the team principals?
That's interesting. It's the engineer and the driver that really come down to it. But I have to say this, I'm going to go to even like my son who's running Indy next this weekend. He just doesn't know. He doesn't have the experience. He doesn't know what changes on the car. So you go 100% off that engineer and what he's telling you. You just give the input to him, what the car's doing. You leave it up to them to try to fix it. But these veterans, these guys that have been around, they know, they've done it so long that they've been through a lot of these changes, and they know what those changes do. They know what it makes. So if an engineer says, hey, it's not turning very good, so I want to put a stiffer right rear spring in that thing to help it turn, and the driver goes, nah, I don't think it's that, okay? I mean, maybe an aero thing, it may be a camber or a toe-in or some other things. And so they could, that's where you get the good engineer, and I think that we've seen that with many teams that could work together.
I overheard the conversation, a bit of it, because you were having it here in the booth when you were talking to him on the phone. You said, hey, look, if he tells you to go into one in a particular gear, do what he told you to do, and then if you crash your car, you say, well, I did what you told me to do.
Yeah, that's right, and that's where he is on as being new to this and not knowing these cars, and so you really kind of rely on the engineers, and you put a lot of credibility. By the way, it's Tim Neff. He was my engineer for a long time. Yeah. I have a lot of trust in Tim. We've had some good races together. He's won a lot of Indy Next races. So, it's one of those things you just have to have that confidence. But kind of, we talked again, and what happened is he did pretty close to what Tim said, but he shifted down 2 gears. But here's what happened. Like everybody did in practice, they're all shifted down 2 gears. They looked at the teammates' telemetry. That's what he did. Problem is, when everybody put new tires on, they went so fast they were only shifting down 1 gear down there, and so he's just not experienced enough to know that, right? He did what he said and was just slowing the car down too much. But that's part of racing, and that's where the veteran drivers, the cars that have been. You got to remember that some of these, they come from all different avenues, out of go-karts, mini sprints, and so much. My kid came out oval sprint cars only, so these guys from Europe and F2, F3s. You just got to learn the cars, and that's the bottom line. Some have an advantage over the others.
Christian Lundgaard with a moment going side by side with Jacob Abel, turns 1 and 2.
Yeah, which is good. I mean, he did it, and Abel right now is off the pace a little bit, struggling just a little bit, that's for sure. Just trying to, and I'm going to use the Abel as the same thing. He doesn't know this. He's counting on his engineer, which is Mike Culliver, matter of fact, who he engineered Jack Harvey, and I was doing the strategy in Indy, obviously, as you guys know. And so he's got a good engineer right now, and he just has to really put his trust in there because he doesn't have the experience to have the input.
Herta, Malukas, Newgarden, Pillow, and Eilert, the top 5. Award, Daly, Lundgaard, Power, Felix Rosenquist, the top 10. The top speed, by the way, 173.508 miles per hour. Hey, let's check in with our good friend Eric Smith. He tells us more, along with Jake Query, about the IndyCar Fantasy Challenge driven by Firestone. Jake?
Indeed, that is exactly correct. The IndyCar Fantasy Challenge driven by Firestone. Eric Smith joining me now here, just as I'm standing next to Felix Rosenquist pit. Eric, let's begin with this. One of the things that I think is fun about this, that I always like to have your eye on, and that is that you can get some additional fantasy points for drivers that move their way through the field. So perhaps sometimes if somebody qualified in a situation that you think they might have a better car than that, there's a chance to grab some points there. Who jumps out at you in terms of the way that they slot for tomorrow night's race that might be a good one to grab on first off in that category?
Yeah, it's an excellent point, Jake. A couple guys come straight to mind, and I agree with Davey because one of them is Santino Ferrucci. Similar, this looks like Indy, and then all of a sudden he races his way up to 5th. He starts 19th, and you could get him for a great value right now on the Grid Rival app. Connor Daly is another one. Another guy that finished in the top 10 at the Indianapolis 500. He starts 15th. He's got 4 Type 10s at Worldwide Technology Raceway. So both of those, I would say, right now are must-haves just because of the value you're going to get for them with their price on Grid Rival app, and you also are going to get the passing points for them because I expect them to be challenging for top 10 spots tomorrow night.
And Eric, it goes without saying that Joseph Newgarden has been so good on this track. Now, I realize maybe to this point, people might be saying to themselves, but he hasn't gotten on track this year the way I anticipated. But these ovals are Newgarden time. Who else jumps out at you when you look at the Worldwide Technology Raceway that their past performances say they'd be a good value?
For sure. Newgarden's for one. Scott McLaughlin's another. He's starting up front. He's got 2 oval wins now. And if you look at 13 short oval starts, when you factor in Iowa Speedway, Milwaukee, I know he's got 1 Nashville start, he's got 11 top 5 finishes. So you know he's going to be running up front, start second. I like Pato Award too, similar. He's got 28 career oval starts, and I'm factoring in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Texas Motor Speedway. I know we don't go to Texas anymore. But he has 20 top 5 finishes in those 28 oval starts, 8 runner-ups, 3 of them on this track, and he starts 3rd. So those are a couple guys you want to look at. David Malukas is right now on the Grid Rival app, great value. He starts 4th. He was finished 2nd in the Indy 500. He's got 2 podiums in his last 3. Really, if not for contact with Will Power last year in this race, he should have 3 in a row. So those are 3 drivers that you want to look at in addition to Joseph Newgarden.
Jay Query here along pit road talking with Eric Smith from INDYCAR about that, of course, fantasy challenge presented by Firestone. Let's go back to one other thing for it, Eric, and that is for those that are unfamiliar, the way that you set a roster, the number of drivers that you have, and the things that you have to take into consideration when you are going and putting together your lineup from one race to the next.
For sure, yeah. You go, it's on Grid Rival app, INDYCAR.com/fantasy. And you get 6 drivers per race. You can factor in 1 race, 2 races, 3 races, and you sign them for $1 allotment. And that depends on the races that you choose. And you have a bank per se, and a predetermined amount of money that you got. So that's going to, like a fantasy football team, or if you're running your own front office of a sports stick and ball sports, you can only spend so much money per year, and this one's per race. So you can finagle it around, but you can't obviously get all favorites because they're always going to cost more and you're going to go over the budget. So as we said at the beginning, where you have to factor in some guys that's going to get you some passing points that might start mid-pack or further back and get you better value for those guys, and maybe sprinkle in some favorites and some sleepers, and you should be having a good squad leading to that race weekend.
Always fun, Eric. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you the next stop along the way, of course, at Road America as we continue to move along here throughout the season. Appreciate it as always.
Oh, thank you, Dick. Appreciate it, too.
Yeah, it's perfect for you and I, Mark, because when it comes to talking about things like having money to spend, that is indeed itself a fantasy. So it's perfect for you and I, right?
Yeah, it's good stuff, Jake. And thanks to Eric Smith. Appreciate all that Eric does to help us promote the NTT INDYCAR series and especially INDYCAR radio week in and week out via the various INDYCAR social media platforms. 28 minutes remaining in this session. Colton Herta continues to show the fast way at 173.508. Malukas, Newgarden, Ilott, and Palou, the fast 5. Award, Daly, Lundgaard, Kiffin, Simpson, Scott McLaughlin, the top 10, Michael Young.
Yeah, and we just saw Colton Herta head back onto the track. Only real significant change that I saw, they took a turn and a half out of that front wing. Scott McLaughlin was in a little bit earlier as well. McLaughlin 2 turns into that front wing. So just about a lot, or so I should say more so wing changes than anything major. No dampers or anything of that accord. It's just those small little tweaks, and I think everybody pretty much in the wheelhouse of where they want to be right now as we see Colton Herta atop of the speed chart.
Well, earlier today we caught up with Larry Voigt, talking to him about the challenges they face in setting up their cars for their drivers, talking about David Malukas and also Santino Ferrucci. Larry Voigt saying there are certainly challenges when it comes to setting up a race car here at Worldwide Technology Raceway.
The biggest thing is you have two different radius corners, right? So it's easy to get caught setting up for one end or the other, but you have to really try to balance the car where it does what you want in both sides. And so our guys definitely have that mindset, I think, going in, and that's how.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big challenge, Davey, more than anything else, is the difference in the radius of those turns, which includes a different banking as well.
Which I'm going to just tell you how different a qualifying car is, a practice car, and a race car. In qualifying, these guys, matter of fact, in Indy Next, they were only shifting down to fifth gear down in turn one. They had so much speed. They gained a lot of speed. They back up in sixth through down through the back straightaway, turn 3 and 4 down the front. Indy cars, they were shifted down twice in practice. I don't know what they were doing for qualifying. I assume as fast as they were running, they were only shifted down one time. Right now, Mark, they're in sixth gear going by the start-finish line. They get to turn 1 and 2. They're down to third gear.
Wow.
Third gear right now. They shift all the way back up to sixth going into turn 3. They shift back into fifth to turn 3 and 4, and then back to sixth down the front straightaway. So these guys are really, really busy in the shifting, and that's how much the pace is different from practice to race setup.
Part of this process includes working on hot pit stops, which teams have been doing. We just saw Callum Ilot's Prema team, and it's been a challenge for them, Davey. A lot of guys doing this for the first time, and guys working together for the first time. And you've got an experienced driver like Callum Ilot, and it looks like that his pit crew so far is working his stops pretty flawlessly.
And that's what they need to do, right? I mean, that's one thing with a new team. Everything's so important, and they lose so much time, and they're pushing limits. We see some smoke coming off tires, coming in the spots, but you as a new team, you have to do everything just right. You lose just make one little mistake. Like matter of fact, we've seen Schwartzman at Indy, our pole sitter, slid into pit lane and ran into some crew guys, and that cost him a lot right there.
We get ready for a busy day tomorrow. We've got the Indy Next by Firestone, which will take the air at 4:25 Eastern for pre-race festivities. Nick Yeoman will be on the call for that one. And Nick Yeoman, I guess it doesn't matter what kind of course we race on. Dennis Hauger is bad fast.
Yeah, Markey secured himself another pole position, his fourth in 2025, a little bit earlier today, with a pretty stout 2-lap average north of 166 miles per hour. He leads the points coming into this weekend over Lockie Hughes and Kyle Collette, and certainly drew a line of the sand with an impressive qualifying run. He's going to lead the field to the green flag, but 19 cars for 75 laps tomorrow night in Indy Next by Firestone.
Nick, as far as this session, you've had your eye on that 3 and 4 end of the race course for quite a while, and that's where you'll set up shop tomorrow night to call the race here in the Bommarito Automotive Group 500 for the Bommarito Automotive Group 500. So what have you noticed about the ability to work that high line in? I mean, we had 2 10-minute sessions to work that high line in. Have we had any takers of this session down in that end?
It's a lot of single file stuff over the last 10 or 15 minutes. Early in the practice session, there definitely were some guys that ventured up, maybe more so down in turns 1 and 2, where I felt like during those highline practices, that was where the focus was. The groove in turns 3 and 4 is pretty similar for everybody wanting to run somewhat close to the bottom, maybe 5 or 6 feet off of that red and white curving. But down in turns 1 and 2, definitely saw a lot of drivers venturing up and running side by side, trying to get around some of the slower traffic. I think guys like Jacob Abel are probably in store for some long nights. They appear to be struggling for speed. Santino Ferrucci, I know you guys touched on him. He's had a hard time staying in front of guys. And then one of the things that I've also noticed, Mark, you and Davey touched on a lot of the hot pit stop practice for these drivers coming on and off, but I've been watching just how aggressive drivers have been pulling off the back straightaway and getting onto the entrance lane to enter the pits, and then also when they leave pit lane through the exit lane on turns 1 and 2. That is where ultimately you're going to make up tenths, hundreds, thousands, even full seconds, and through a course of a long run, if you feel like you have a good race car, that can be the difference between winning and losing. And if you feel like you're struggling, that could be the difference of even staying on the lead lap. So watching these drivers throughout the course of this practice session, Mark, really trying to get aggressive, getting onto pit pit lane, and it all starts as they dive off on the back straightaway.
And Nick, about that pit lane, I think the advantages are this. Obviously, if you're Colton Herta and you're the pole sitter at the last race, you can get that first pit stall, which makes all the sense in the world. But I think once you get about 2 or 3 pit stalls back, the way these pit boxes are aligned, it really makes a lot of sense to try to maybe choose one near that break, right near the start-finish line, or maybe even go back as far as pit in.
And looking down at the pit lane, some of the guys that may have an advantage there. Graham Rahal's got a pretty easy entrance in. He's got that NTT Performance pit right behind, so he's got an easy in. Renus VK has an easy out. So there are certainly some options to play with. And ultimately, Mark, looking at from a top, these pit boxes do appear to be pretty wide. So these drivers shouldn't have any problem getting in and out of the pit boxes. Of course, that changes when we start going to some of these road and street circuits, especially the street circuits when you've got a temporary pit lane set up. So the pit boxes appear to be very big, but you're absolutely right. If you have an easy in or an easy out, or you have a driver that falls out of a race and certainly opens up an easier in for you to a pit box, those are the hundreds and thousands of seconds you can certainly make up tomorrow night.
And Danny, the best in may belong to Graham Rahal, in fact, because as Nick described, he's past the break, and then there's a television camera lip. There's a performance pit for NTT. There's 5. He's got 3 pit boxes he can go through before he gets into his.
You're right. That is one of the best spots, no question. But you always like to be in the very first spot, right? Because you pass the start-finish line. So is Graham. He's already passing it. But you have an easy out. Well, Graham's the same. Easy in. He has to go around the car coming out, but he can kind of position himself with such an easy in. Then his teammate behind him, I think that's his team. Oh, no, that's Serena's VK behind him. It's tight getting in, but he has a free out. So you're exactly right. You want to try to find those openings if possible.
Jake Query.
Marcus Armstrong is sitting on pit road after a very lengthy pit stop. Now, they're getting ready to send him back out, but they just took off the rear cowling of the car and actually did a complete overhaul of the springs on the car. He was very happy with his car after qualifying. Seemed like he liked the setup and the way that 66 car felt, that Spectrum sponsorship on the side pods of it. But as he fires up to go back out, Davey, I will admit completely my naivete here because of the fact of a late practice session like this and a practice session this long to end the day, and that is simply how atypical is that you would come in after qualifying, after your car's been set up, and go ahead and do an overhaul and make those spring adjustments and changes to the rear of the car and the balance of the car in a session this late.
Well, one difference that they have is full fuel loads, and that can make a difference. So they're probably more downforce, full fuel loads, and looking for the long runs. And sometimes, there's a lot of difference in weight. So they may have to do some spring changes because they don't like the ride heights that they have down there, or it could be, just too much on the rear end where the front doesn't turn that well in these race conditions. And as I told Mark, man, all the way down to third gear, down there in turns 1 and 2, which that's kind of unheard of. I didn't think they were going that. They're going from 6th to 3rd, shift down 3 times. This is an oval, by the way. I want to remind everybody. This is an oval race, and we're not supposed to be shifting down at all hardly. So pretty impressive.
So we're at about the 19-minute mark, and again, a busy day tomorrow, 4:25 Eastern. Nick Yeoman, Davey Hamilton, yours truly will be out calling the turns 3, and from where we are, we can see the whole racetrack from out there. So maybe calling more than that, and then of course Michael Young and Jake Query will be on pit lane. Then Nick and I will swap spots, move back in the booth. Nick will go out, cover 3 and 4, the rest of the course, and we'll add DJ Clark to our pre-race festivities as we take the air at 7:30. I'm really excited about this race tomorrow. I think it's going to be a good one.
Well, I'm an oval guy. I love it. I love the ovals. I think that, I love it for these fans that can sit in one seat and see the entire race. I mean, the action's all in front of us, and hey, these ovals are tricky. There's walls all the way around. There's no room for forgiveness, and I'm excited as well to watch this race.
Well, and again, I have said this many, many times over my 30 years or so doing this, and I had a lot of fun in the early days when you guys were doing the all-oval series. We had a chance to call it. It was exhausting. It was a lot of fun. But there's a lot to be said, and whoever the champion was at that time was a deserving champion, and I think that's true today. I mean, just look, 6 of the next 7 weeks, Davey. We've got this oval here, then we go to Road America, then Mid-Ohio, then we go a doubleheader weekend at Iowa Speedway, and then the streets of Toronto, WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca, then to Portland, Milwaukee, and Nashville.
Well, if I ever had any control of schedule, I would love to see 5 big ovals, which was be like Michigan's and Indy, obviously. Some of the bigger ovals, even the mile and a halves, count them as big ovals. Kentucky maybe, or not Kentucky, but Kansas. Some of the fun ones that we went to. And then I'd take 5 short ovals, that we are here at one. We do Milwaukee, we do Iowa already. Then I take 5 street courses and I take 5 road courses. That's a 20 race series. 5 of each, and the winner takes all. And I think that is a challenge that no other series could ever compete against. And I think it'd be good for everybody.
One place we could never go back to because it's not a functioning competitive place, and I'm sure there's upgrades that would have to be done. I always enjoy going to beautiful Pikes Peak, but
if we could, the track's still there. Don't give up.
I know
Don't
it
give
is.
up.
No, the track's still there. I know, but a lot would have to be done for that to happen.
Yeah,
for sure.
You're right.
But the 2, if I were king for a day, that we've been to in the past, that I'd love to see us go to again and again. A lot of things have to happen. The business has to make sense first and foremost. Would be Watkins Glen and Richmond.
Agreed. Absolutely. There's 2 great ones right there. We actually had fun in New Hampshire as well, but those 2, I completely agree. I mean, we're a beautiful road America. We need to be. I know there's some situations that some of these tracks, I know Watkins Glen, what a beautiful area, but I know they have some Armco down there. It may be a little bit concerning for some of our cars, but with the safer barriers in certain areas, I think that could be fixed. And as I said, and I love Sonoma, but I know it's supposed to. I think Sonoma's a great one, but there's some new markets that we could go into as well. I think that. And like I say, you just try to pick out the 5 of the very, very best. And I we ran Charlotte in INDYCAR. It was a bit bumpy for us, but we made it happen, and we ran Homestead. I mean, there's definitely some large tracks around there we can make happen.
Nick Yeoman, we were very busy early on throughout the first 15 minutes or so of this session, maybe 20 minutes of this session. We saw a lot of cars running in traffic, but boy, since that time, because of all of the adjustments that have been made, things are pretty well strung out. And I guess if nothing else, these teams are getting a good opportunity to see how well their cars are handling from time to time in traffic and by their lonesome.
Yeah, and I think also the thing we're seeing is long runs, too. I've been watching guys like Alex Palou. He's been on the racetrack for quite a while now. The Prema cars, of course, the short oval racing, completely new to that team. They've been going through some long runs. So, yeah, it's separated itself a little bit. About half of the field seems like they're on the racetrack right now, another half on pit lane making adjustments. Guys like Marcus Erickson, that's Connor Daly and Stingray Robb. They're both on pit lane making some adjustments. Pato O'Ward is as well. But I think we're starting to see some drivers really push what those Firestones can do later in a run, knock the shine off of them, and see how they're going to handle later in a run. Guys like Joseph Newgarden trying to run through traffic right now down the back straightaway. So seeing some longer runs and really teams trying to stretch and see what they have and how those cars handle once, the ability to handle those cars starts to go away.
Nick, really, he's putting on a pretty good show with Felix Rosenquist right now as they're setting up for turn number 1. They've been running pretty much nose to tail for about 4 or 5 laps now.
Yeah, Joseph Newgarden, I remember a couple years ago, he was using the high line there in turns 1 and 2 to pass guys as he came from mid-pack a year ago. He spun off of turn number 2 and still went on down to Felix Rosenquist, and he's got Callum Ilott about 8 to 10 car lengths behind Marcus. They all work that inside groove through turns 3 and 4.
Nick talked about some of these drivers going on these long runs, Davey, and that there are multiple goals when you're going runs.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Nick's got a good eye because he said Plo, he got 42 laps, Rossi 45 laps, Siegel 49 laps. Definitely going on these long runs, and what that does kind of goes through the fuel load to see how that balance changes, and tire degradation to see just how much these tires are wearing, how much the times drop off. But that fuel load from start to finish just changes the balance of the car quite a bit. But I think the biggest thing is just see how long these Firestones are going to hang on during the stint.
Michael Young.
Sitting in front of Pato O'Ward's pit box, watching them go to work on the rear end of that car. They're putting in a different damper using the same spring, so a slight adjustment for Pato. He's been working the track, obviously starting on the inside of road number 3, and he's one of those drivers that Davey Hamilton talked about going down into third gear on the south end of this track through turns 1 and 2. So we'll try to get a word with Nick Snyder and see the thought process on that and the gear ratios that they are running and see if that's even normal at this point. But some late changes for Pato O'Ward.
Davey, give us a little preview. I know we've got one more race once we're done with this. One more piece of track activity, and always cool to see the Silver Crown cars up close and personal.
It really is. I actually, kind of bummed I don't have a couple of them here, but just didn't play out this year. They're ready, just didn't have drivers. So we'll try to do it next year. But great cars. I mean, they're hitting 180 miles an hour mark down these long straightaways. They're super fun to watch. These are all grassroots racers just trying to make it to the next level. And man, they put on a good show. And by the way, they have zero downforce. I mean, zero downforce. There's nothing to push these cars on the ground to make them handle. If you look at a car from 1950 to today, there's still straight axles, front and rear. The shocks are out on towers. They're not aerodynamic, or there's no downforce. So they're a beast to drive.
And as often the case with that series, they had a very late night last night, had to get here and get loaded in. And but one of the people that covers them in the pits is a former student of mine, Genevieve Malone, and I said, was it a short night for you? She said, I didn't get any sleep. I just took a nap.
Well, here's how it works. This short track racing is fun.
That's right.
Everybody tells you how much fun it is. You're going to race 100 times this year. Oh, yeah, it's great. But they got done. They got their hotel at 5 this morning. Most of them took a little nap, maybe a little shower. They came straight here. And by the way, their first practice was at 9:15. So they were here like at 7:30, getting prepared for it. Then it rained all morning. And then they got one practice/qualifying practice session. They've been here all day. They run tonight. And by the way, don't worry, this is Friday night. There's some races Saturday night a lot of these drivers are going to go to as well.
And, you know, I can remember hearing the stories of, former members of this radio network that sadly we've lost over the years, like Larry Rice and Kevin Olson, and even friends of mine like Bruce Walkup and others that ran sprint midgets over crown cars. And how many nights they traveled, drove all night, slept in their cars, and sometimes they get any sleep at all between shows.
Hey, I said it was Friday night. It feels like Friday night. It's really not. It's Saturday night. We race Sunday night. Normally we race on Saturday nights under the lights, but it still got mixed up there. Sorry about that. But it's under the lights. It's Sunday night. But you're right. Those are all Gary Bittenhouse. As a matter of fact, we all but love him. You grew up right by him, right down the road, Monrovia there. And that guy, I remember him driving. I mean, a lot of people think it's glamour, which it is fun to do. But when you stop and it's sandwiches and sodas, and you better get in the car quick or they leave you at the truck stop while they're fueling up, right? I mean, it's a full emergency to get to the next racetrack.
Living, breathing definition of a labor of love. And Nick Yeoman, the driver that starts on the outside of row number 2, is Scott McLaughlin. He was knocked off the pole by his teammate Will Power, but Scott McLaughlin headed your way off of turn number 4.
Yeah, and I think he is one of many drivers that felt like, you come to a short oval, there's always a little more. You feel like you left on the table. All by himself, though, navigating turns 1 and 2, runs the inside groove as he rockets up off of the second corner.
Now, that red and white curving to the bottom of the racetrack through 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, Davey, I mean, is that something that you feel with that left front, or is it pretty smooth?
They're actually fairly smooth, but you do lose some grip there. It does help the car turn sometimes. You lose a little rear grip. It does help the car turn down there at times. There's a little difference from banking there. But, one thing you work at McLaughlin and just how hard these drivers work, you can see the gear number, what they're in. He's in 3rd right now. He goes to 4th. And then all of a sudden, you see him reach down and he grabs a bar. That means he went to P4, either on the weight jacker or on the anti-roll bar. I think it was a weight jacker potentially. And then he's going to go down the back straightaway right now, or I guess the front straightaway. He's in 6th. He changes it back to 2. So every lap, he's not only just changing gears, he changes the anti-roll bar as well.
So Joseph Newgarden continues P1, 174.812. Alex Palou is second fastest at 174.775. Alexander Rossi is third quick. Nolan Siegel is fourth. Kiffin Simpson is fifth. Felix Rosenquist is sixth. Then Colton Herta, David Malukas, Connor Daly, and Callum Eilot. Pato Award is 11th. Scott Dixon is 12th. Christian Lundgaard is 13th. Kirkwood is 14th, and Will Power currently 15th fastest. Michael Young.
Race strategist Nick Snyder. I'm watching you watch these screens, and it's fascinating because it just looks like a bunch of lines. Describe to the race fans, and you have about 5 monitors in front of you and a camera watching your eyes as well. What is it you're keeping track of?
We're watching our car's telemetry to see what our car's doing. We're watching timing and scoring. As cars are in the long run, seeing what their pace is doing. Are they getting quicker? Are they slowing down? Just monitoring overall performance and where we're at compared to the field right now.
J.B. Hamilton was watching the in-car camera of Pato going down to 3rd gear in turns 1 and 2. Is that normal, or is that something you guys are trying out for the first time this year?
Kind of normal, yeah. Nothing new there.
All right, well, that's good to know because we've always thought you stay in 5th and 6th, so that's great. What's Pato saying about the car, this final session, and the track as a whole?
It's pretty good right now. Just monitoring track condition. It's cooling off a little bit. just keeping ahead of the balance for tomorrow.
I'll let you get back to it. Thank you for the time as always.
Thank you.
Nick Snyder, race strategist for Potto Awards.
Nick Yeoman, I know how nervous I get when I pull alongside a car or a semi on I-70. I can't imagine being Joseph Newgarden and Scott McLaughlin right now.
It's so much so, Mark, that I am wondering if those two may have an interesting conversation after this practice session, because it got ridiculously tight in turn number 1. Joseph got a great run down the front straightaway, pulled to the inside of Scott McLaughlin, and Scott essentially said, no, bud, I'm not letting you by. They went side by side into turn number 1. I don't know how they didn't crash. And then they went side by side down the back straightaway as well. So, listen, I know they're teammates, but I think they also realized, hey, that's who I'm going to have to battle for the race win. And it got awful tight down there in turn 1 just moments ago.
Admittedly, there is a level of trust, and you and I have talked about this many, many times over the years, that you guys all know, and gals all know, who you can drive like that with and who you can't.
No, that's right. That is right. You can't, if it's somebody you don't trust, you're definitely not going to do that. But obviously they trust each other. And the on board with Newgarden, he did turn the wheel. Once he came off, he got down there underneath them. He held the wheel straight. He didn't make any moves. But McLaughlin was coming down just a little bit. No, they didn't touch. So, I mean, but yeah, you got to trust the guy you're next to for sure.
That a guy you know well that ran in this series and also served as our driver analyst on a handful of occasions, Jacques Lazier. I asked him off air one time, I said, was there one driver more than any other that you just, if you came up on him and you were faster than him, you just held, and I won't say who it was, but he didn't hesitate to answer me. I mean, he gave me an answer right away.
You know, there were several through our career. There are several. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? And sometimes you had to have that little conversation. And I had a few of them, and we all have, because the way I look at it, hey, you're going to have your good days, you're going to have your bad days. But if you always play offense, right? I mean, and don't play defense, it's always going to work out for you. And when you have your good days, you're playing offense, trying to go to the front. But then you got a lapper or somebody way at the pace playing defense, just trying to ruin your race, which has happened before. It's just not fun. And you know, you got to remember, they're going to have a good day someday, and maybe you have a bad day, and you don't want to do the same to them, but sometimes it's payback. So, yeah, it's a crazy game.
6 minutes left in the session. A close call for Colton Herta, says Nick Yeoman.
Yeah, he just had a moment down in turn number 3. He was trying to pass Scott McLaughlin, got to the inside, had a good charge down the back straightaway, and again, Scott decided to run that upper second groove, and when Colton dove in, he got the nose chopped off of the race car, and then it took all the aero force away from that car, and all of a sudden Colton's car went skating up the racetrack. He jumped out of the throttle, saved it, didn't spin, and kept it out of the wall, but abruptly went off the pace and came back down to pit lane. So getting aggressive, trying to get around a very fast guy like Scott McLaughlin, and it nearly bit Colton Herta in turn 3.
Yeah, and when you get close to somebody like that, Mark, I mean, that dirty air really washes your car up like that. And so it was a situation where Colton, he's probably prepared for it in all honesty, that's going to happen, but thought he'd give it a try. Right now, it looks like Colton's doing some pit stop practice, just came in, did a stop, and came back out. We see a lot of cars doing that right now, including McLaughlin. Just right now, at the end of these sessions, it's time to do your pit stop practice.
You talked about what that air does. I mean, you pull up to a car and you get to its side. What does that feel like when you get alongside a car? What happens to the air? What happens to the car?
You know what's wild about it is I didn't realize it, but when we had open cockpits, right? No aero screen. Man, your helmet's moving around, and you feel that dead air, because usually when it's the solid air, it's hitting your helmet, and it's pretty consistent. And all of a sudden, you're in that dirty air, your helmet's banging around and moving. You know the cars do the same thing, although you don't feel it in the car as much as you do as your helmet. Now that they have these aero screens on, they have no more helmet movement. The air doesn't affect that helmet. So it's so you're a little braver. You get in there, and now it's just you got to kind of know what you're going to do, where that aero wash, as we call it, is, and where your car's handling. If it's already understeering, if you get an aero wash or behind a guy with, it takes the air off the front of your car, you know it's going to push.
Alex Palou had to work a little harder than I'm sure he wanted to get around Jacob Abel as they both exited the pit lane at the same time.
Yeah, and right now everybody's going hard. You got guys going to him. Another Herta just making another pit stop, coming back on racetrack. And you got to remember, he's not just going in and out. He's making a lap, so he's trying to make that stop, get on a racetrack, get up to speed, get by the start-finish line, and sometimes make a lap just to make sure you get up to speed at the very best you can and get the max out of that. Come in, do another stop, get slowed down as we see some guys smoking their tire coming into the pit spot. We see Scott Dixon right now coming in. Ooh, wow. I mean, talk about close. We talk about these pit boxes being a little bigger, but, boy, he used up every centimeter. I'm not so sure hit that car that's behind him. I mean, it was close.
Well, you're more towards the 3 and 4 end, Nick Yeoman. As you and I both know well, you can see plenty of turn number 2, and that's where teams will be exiting the pit lane after they make their pit stops. And I will say this, during green flag pit stops, those spotters that are above us here in the main grandstand are going to have their work cut out for them getting those cars safely and cleanly off pit lane. And they're going to need every square inch of that 1,900-foot backstraight to get up to speed.
Yeah, and something to keep in mind, Mark, also is when you, especially during a green flag scenario, a longer run, is when those cars come off a pit lane, those Firestone tires are cold. And obviously, if you sail it off into turn number 3 and you're in the midst of a battle or trying to stay on the lead lap, yeah, you're definitely relying on that spotter to kind of find you a gap. And there's no doubt. Turn 2, watching the onboard shots, Davey, I don't know if you feel this way. It always feels like there's a bit of a funneling effect. It just seems like it gets really tight for those drivers. So when they're leaving turn 2 and things are getting tight, and then all of a sudden you've got cars exiting pit lane, it can get very, very hairy there up
Yeah, it's true. It's these. You look at this racetrack; it's pretty wide, but the entry to these corners are not, especially turn 1, so tight. It's hard because there's a particular line that you really want to be in. It's hard to get out of that going into turn 1. But you're right, down to turn 3 is the same thing. If you get too high, there's just no grip on the entry. Now, later in the corner, you can start moving up, and on exit, you can start moving up. But the entry is a very narrow line, get through there, so you don't want to be squeezed up high.
You talk about an entry. That entry to the pit lane is not nearly as wide as it looks to the naked eye.
No, it's a one-car deal, and you got to, another thing about, that we don't even talk about because it's not part of the racetrack, but it is exit of getting back on the racetrack and that pit entry. There's no speed limit there. You got to come in as fast as you can without making a mistake and sliding up on the racetrack. And I mean, that's not easy to do either, because if you make that's not very wide and the car slides a little bit and you get in the grass, that could cause big havoc. And so then once you get around that corner, it's time to get on the brakes. That's where we see these guys smoking the tires at the timeline.
Who do you like tomorrow?
I'm going to be stingy and take a Penske car, and I think that Penske car is going to be Will Power.
Yeah, I mean, right now, throughout the course of the weekend, I mean, let's face it, those cars have been awfully fast, and they have a history of being fast.
They have a history of being fast, and I think Will's hungry. He's fighting for his job. He wants to stay here. Been rumors going around that he may not be back in that car next year. I just think that, he's still a good racer. He still get it done, and I think if everything goes his way, he definitely could be a contender. Now, there's 26 other guys saying different, but I right now think Power. I think kind of hope he wins, and I'm gonna give him a shot for tomorrow.
Will Power, Scott McLaughlin will roll off on the front row. It'll be Pato Ward and David Malukas in row number 2. Joseph Newgarden, Marcus Armstrong in row 3. Felix Rosenquist, Colton Herta in row 4. Row number 5, Alex Palou and Kyle Kirkwood. Scott Dixon and Alexander Rossi in row number 6. In row 7, Marcus Erickson and Christian Lundgaard. In row number 8, Connor Daly, Callum Ilott, Devlin DeFrancesco, and Regis VK in row 9. In row 10, Santino Ferrucci, Nolan Siegel, Louis Foster, and Graham Rahal in row 11. Row 12, Stingray Robb and Robert Schwartzman. In row number 13, Christian Rasmussen, Kiffin Simpson, and rolling off 27th will be Jacob Abel. Fastest in this session, David Malukas, 176.799 miles per hour. 4:25 Eastern Time, 3:25 local. Join us for complete coverage of the Indy Next by Firestone, and then flag-to-flag coverage of the Bommarito Automotive Group. 500 comes your way, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central Time tomorrow. For the whole gang, great job throughout a very long day. For Davey Hamilton, this is Mark James and the rest of our crew saying so long for now from Worldwide Technology Raceway.
The preceding was an exclusive copyrighted presentation of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network.
Nothing beats seeing a child smile. For over 3 decades, Racing for Kids has been bringing IndyCar drivers to the bedsides of sick children and putting smiles on the faces of thousands of hospitalized youngsters. Doctors and caregivers say these visits from an IndyCar driver are an important part of each child's recovery, brightening their days and giving them hope in the midst of long and often painful therapies. Join the Racing for Kids team. Support these smile-making hospital visits by going to racingforkids.org.
Attention, those of you looking to go on a fun vacation and see the world on the cheap. Today, the U.S. dollar is worth even more in other countries, so there's never been a better time to travel outside the USA. The dollar is worth over $1.30 in Canadian dollars, and it's the same for Australia. You can fly there today and have fun and maximize your travel dollar. Your U.S. dollar is worth over $3 in Brazilian reals, and it's worth over $18 in Mexican pesos. Plus, in Argentina, it's worth over $27 in Argentine pesos. Just think of the bargains you'll get. And the way you get the cheapest airfare to any destination is by calling Tickets That Cheap. Save up to 75% on your foreign vacation tickets. Don't wait. Call now. 800-932-1548. 800-932-1548. 800-932-1548. That's 800-932-1548.
Every lap, every session, every race. Download the INDYCAR app powered by NTT Data today for live onboard cameras, timing and scoring, and more. Download in the App Store or Google Play.
Sports fans from Indianapolis, Indiana, from the world's greatest race course, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, this is Sid Collins.
I'm Paul Page.
My name is Lou Pollard. This is Bob Jenkins in the Master Control Tower.
This is Mike King, and this is the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
And he's on it.
When the qualifications opened on the 4th day, history was made. In less than 5 minutes, 39-year-old Janet Guthrie of New York City had qualified for a 500-mile race.
In company with the first lady ever to qualify at Indianapolis, gentlemen, start your engines.
They're side by side. Emmo on the inside. Alcott in traffic. Goes high. They touch wheels. Oh, Junior into the wall hard. Emerson Fittipaldi keeps on going.
Not only the eyes of Texas, but the eyes of the world are on this great man. And now to call the checkered flag, our chief announcer, who did call a great race today, Paul Page.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air. He is the winner. A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis has won his 4th 500-mile race.
Al Unser Sr. had not led here since 1983. He's going to win his 4th Indianapolis 500. He's got one more turn to negotiate, and he'll be home free. He's only the 3rd driver in history to win the race from the 20th starting position to call the winner. Here's the voice of the 500, Paul Page.
And history is matched as the twin checkered flags come out for our 2nd 4-time winner of the Indianapolis 500, Al Unser.
The fans on their feet waving their hands as Rick Mears goes by and heads to 4. He's closer to that checkered flag.
Just one more turn to go. The crowd roaring. Rick Mears heads toward number 4. He's down the main straightaway. Here's Bob Jenkins.
Rick Mears becomes the 3rd 4-time winner of the Indianapolis 500, winning the Diamond Jubilee Edition, the 75th running of this great speed classic.
Al Unser Jr. has the lead. One more turn to go. Here they come. Coming to the finish line. Bob Jenkins, who's going to win it?
The checkered flag is out. Goodyear makes a move. Little Al wins by just a few tenths of a second. Perhaps the closest finish in the history of the Indianapolis 500.
This is Sid Collins, the voice of the 500, wishing you good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where in the world you are right now. We're here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway at the crossroads of America.
From the world's greatest race course, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway,
the Indy Racing Northern Light Series takes to the air with live coverage of the 84th running of the Indianapolis 500. Today, the Northern Light Cup drivers vie for the richest purse in auto racing, over $9 million.
Checker flags are out, and you name it, a new face will adorn the Borg Warner Trophy as Kenny Brack wins the 83rd Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Live coverage is brought to you by NorthernLight.com, the proud sponsor of the Indy Racing Northern Light Series. Pennzoil, the official motor oil of the Indy Racing League. RCA, changing entertainment again. Marsh Supermarkets, the choice supermarket of the Indianapolis 500. Oldsmobile, the official pace car of the Indianapolis 500. Nokia, the preferred mobile phone of the Indianapolis 500. Veritas, the data availability company. Veritas, business without interruption. And Firestone, America's tire since 1900. Now, here's the radio voice of the Indianapolis 500, Mike King.
May 28th, the year 2000, and it is race day at the Brickyard. The 84th running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race is upon us, and we're happy that you have joined us this Memorial Day weekend for our live coverage here on the Indy Racing Radio Network. My name is Mike King. I'm honored to be anchoring this worldwide broadcast for a second straight year. I'm joined by a dozen outstanding announcers, expert analysts, journalists, and the foremost authority on the history of this event. Along with our producers and technical staff, we'll cover the race course, pits, garage area, and the stories that make the Indianapolis 500-mile race the greatest spectacle in racing. The weather forecast has threatened rain, and right now the threat, it appears to be imminent. The layout remains mostly dry at this point. The 33 drivers are supposed to receive the command to fire engines in approximately 45 minutes. Thousands of fans continue to pour into this Palace of Speed at the corner of 16th and Georgetown, joining the 250,000 or so that have already found their seats. We come to you this morning from the 9th floor of the incredible new 21st Century Pagoda, an amazing concrete, steel, and glass structure that rises 120 feet above the front straight and gives us a spectacular view of this race course. The new pagoda, the centerpiece of a multi-million-dollar renovation project that will ensure the Indianapolis Motor Speedway standing as the world's greatest race course for decades to